Russia thought brute force was enough. 320 drones, missiles from the Black Sea, and a wave so massive it seemed unstoppable. Ukrainian skies lit up with fire, radar screens flooded with signals, and yet the real battle wasn't decided that night, because days later an attack left Russia reeling. Not soldiers struck, but its critical oil lifeline. How did Ukraine transform from being outnumbered and outgunned to shaking confidence in Moscow's war machine? This isn't just retaliation, it's a new way of warfare. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Imagine a sound that doesn't even match what your ears know as mechanical or natural. It was a droning so deep and layered that it rattled rooftops and shivered the frames of windows before the first explosion hit. Veterans later described it like the ground itself was alive, humming in a way that made sense only when the sky above cracked open with the whine of engines. What Ukraine's defenders heard in those moments wasn't one machine tearing through the air, it was hundreds. When the first missiles lit across the horizon and the drones pushed into view, Kherson was no longer a city waking up for dawn. It was a battlefield wrapped in smoke within minutes. Russia had prepared a saturation strike calibrated to overwhelm every safeguard at once, sending 320 drones forward with cruise missiles laced between them. Residential blocks, schools, hospitals, even churches fell within the target circle. The scale was not precision, it was weight, a sheer flood of cheap flying machines designed to wear out crews, drain ammunition stocks, and make sure enough payloads slipped past any interception. For Kherson's defenders, every console glowed with incoming signals stacked across the scopes, lights layering until the picture became more clutter than clarity. Operators called their displays useless, smudges full of echoes and shadows. They tried anyway, launching intercepts, aligning radar locks, pushing every available system into the sky. Inside the control rooms, the situation carried a surreal edge. Men and women stared hard into screens filled with what they called ghosts, little blips that could be tricks or bombs. Each decision had only a second of thought behind it, because every delay meant another drone cut closer to the neighborhoods below. One interceptor missile would rise and knock a target from the sky, a fiery arc ending in scattered fragments, and immediately 5 more objects broke into range. It was like scooping a single bucket of water against a river spilling over the banks. A sense of futility even as each interception mattered. The sound of the incoming engines drowned out the background of exploding debris, merging into a continuous rumble that matched the urgency in the operation centers. By the end of that sequence, Ukrainian crews claimed 61 drones destroyed. It was a number that showed their skill, but it also underscored the problem. With hundreds in the air, every successful interception still meant multiple machines surviving the gauntlet. Kherson streets held the evidence. Stores collapsed under broken glass, hospital wards ripped wide by shrapnel, church spires snapped in half. For 15 minutes, civilians had nowhere to run while the city endured bombardment that killed 46 people before silence returned. Families pulled survivors from the rubble as trails of smoke etched the sky, proof that even with defenses working at capacity, losses piled up too fast to stop. What the strike revealed wasn't just the reach of one night's attack, but the ugly math of low-cost warfare. Drones built at a fraction of the price of a guided missile were chewing through anti-air weapon stocks valued in millions. Each loss Russia absorbed financially was minimal. Each failure Ukraine experienced on defense meant lives erased and buildings burning. The balance sheet from that morning marked civilians as the most vulnerable line of defense. Kherson showed that brute force alone could be called a win in tactical terms. Yet what was left standing spelled out a darker reality. This was not simply an assault to destroy targets, but an experiment in pushing new weapons against modern air defense. And yet, as Moscow presented the strike as proof of dominance, it unintentionally lit a fuse. Because if Russian planners demonstrated how a swarm could break a system, Ukraine drew another lesson from the ashes. In basements and garages across the country, a new kind of response was already taking shape, one that would return the swarm in ways Russia did not anticipate. What happens when students, hobbyists, and engineers decide that ordinary tools are not enough and their basements become battlefields in waiting? The answer came a few weeks after Kherson, when fire rose over Sochi's oil facilities. That fire did not come from a cruise missile or an advanced fighter jet. It came from objects that began life as plastic pieces fed through 3D printers, wiring kits bought online, and navigation systems adapted from consumer electronics. Ukraine, battered but not broken, shifted its defense into the hands of civilians who refused to stay idle. The result was a program called the Ghost Swarm. It was not born from government contracts or official doctrine. It was shaped in garages, attics, and classrooms, where people with no rank or uniform asked the same question: what can we build that Moscow cannot stop? After Kherson, families dug through rubble while miles away engineering students worked late into the night, running prototypes on laptops still covered with stickers from college clubs. Workshops hidden in basements cranked out frames that weighed less than 2 pounds but carried small, efficient combustion engines. The resourcefulness was striking. Instead of waiting for billion-dollar missile systems imported from abroad, these teams pressed basic industrial printers into service and fed the machines files downloaded and altered in real time. Frames snapped together like model kits, layered with polymers designed to scatter radar beams and reduce signature. Motherboards were soldered together on kitchen tables, networked into a mesh system so that every drone could talk to the others, pass updated flight data, and keep moving even if one was jammed. With enough hands pitching in, the numbers added up, and a new kind of arsenal emerged not from military contracts, but community effort. Russian air defense doctrine had been calibrated for decades against different threats: high-speed jets at 30,000 feet, cruise missiles blazing with thermal signatures crossing borders, intercontinental systems meant to catch what they saw streaking through open sky. What they never trained for was a cluster of meter-wide plastic bodies flying low enough to skim tree lines or hug along the Black Sea surface, traveling under radars that set their filters to ignore noise at those altitudes. To the screens of Russian defense officers, most of the ghost swarm appeared invisible until it was far too late. Unlike Kherson, the swarm was not about overwhelming numbers, but about the right size of threat: small, quiet, difficult to see, impossible to predict. Ukraine's ghost swarm did more than retaliate. It strategically pressed against the arteries that kept naval units supplied, forcing Russia to stretch routes and signal weakness. The broader message was unavoidable. Cost no longer secured dominance. Where one side poured billions into long-range systems, the other spent thousands on plastic, circuitry, and code. Kherson showed the danger of brute force, but Sochi proved adaptation could swing the balance, rewriting warfare from the ground up. And if civilians could reshape the battlefield this quickly, it left an even sharper question: who really held the advantage in a war that now favored speed of imagination over depth of arsenal? Kherson showed how numbers alone could terrorize a city, leaving defenses straining and civilians exposed. But Sochi revealed something different: innovation, built outside traditional military structures, turned low-cost devices into tools capable of striking at the heart of Russia's operations. That shift mattered more than individual victories or losses. If the battlefield favors those who adapt fastest, then the side with flexibility may hold the true advantage. Expensive arsenals can burn through budgets, but garage-built swarms can spread endlessly. The question now is not about firepower. It's about who rewrites tactics faster when the rules keep changing.